Hi, Alan.
Oops. Howdy. Good to see you.
Hi. Good to see you too. Hi, Suzette. Hi, Michiko. How are you? Nice to see you. Hi there, Chris. Hi, Christopher. Christy. I'm obviously doing this in alphabetical order. Hi, Megan. Hey, Katie. Welcome, Pamela. Glad to see you all here. We'll do one more minute and then we can go ahead and get started. While you're waiting, I see that you're already starting to put some good stuff in the chat. Thanks for doing that. Um, Pamela's the only one that's shared with us her summer plans. So if anybody else has something fun going on this summer, please feel free to share in the chat. Hi, Shelly.
Hi. I'm a Cedar Point fan. So Cedar Point
Oh, I love Cedar Point. That's
roller
great.
coasters. Yeah, we went on opening day last weekend or 2 weekends ago. I would not suggest that. It is not
Was
ready.
it
They're not
crazy?
ready. But nothing was open, no food. Yeah.
Oh,
But
just
we'll
the
go back.
rides were open.
Eh, couple.
Okay.
Mhm. They just were purchased by Six Flags, so I think there's a transition.
I didn't know that they were purchased by Six Flags. Meanwhile, the Six Flags in the DC area where I am has just shut down last
Ooh,
year. I know,
that's a
not a
bummer.
good sign for Cedar Point.
Maybe to buy Cedar Point, they had to shut that down. I don't know.
Maybe, maybe. Um, wow, everyone has such fun plans for the summer. Lake, London, baby Leo turns 2. How exciting. Colorado, California. Amazing. That's all amazing. So glad for you all. All righty. So feel free to continue introducing yourselves in the chat, sharing your summer plans, your locations, etc. We're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar about how to make the most of your executive coaching engagements. Okay, my screen just flipped, right?
Yes, it did.
Okay, that's a new fun thing that's happening with my PowerPoint. Let me just share one more time. Sorry about that. All right, how about that? Looks better?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. Um, so very briefly, I want to introduce ourselves here at the Sparks Group. We know many of you on the call, but for those of you that don't know us yet, we are a small but mighty team that runs the Sparks Group, which does coaching and leadership development. So we have Jessica, who's our founder and CEO. She was going to be here today, but she unfortunately had to go to a funeral. So she's not going to join us today for the webinar. I'm Anna Sparks. Very confusingly, my last name is Sparks and the company name is Sparks, and I'm not the owner of the company. So go figure. But yes, that is that's just serendipitous. And then we have Lisa Thompson who's joining us. She's going to be mostly off screen today because she has a little munchkin at home who sometimes likes to get into the frame and distract everyone with his cuteness. So that's our team.
Hi, everyone. Anna, the screen went back. It's not on presentation mode again.
Thank you so much. I'm going to try one more time, guys, and then maybe we're just going to have to live with it. Okay, dokie, let's try to keep going here. In addition to the three of us who I just introduced, we do have an amazing team of coaches, facilitators, and consultants that we work with. Here's all of their pictures. It seems like a lot at this point, but we have a wonderful team. They support us. Dang, guys. They support us in offering a number of different services. Let me try one more time. Including vertical development, which some of you are familiar with. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Leadership coaching, transition coaching for folks who are transitioning into new roles or potentially transitioning out of companies into retirement. Group and team coaching, some consulting, facilitation and training. So that might be big leadership development programs. It might be a small management skills training on a particular skill like delegation, for example. And then Jessica also does some speaking engagements. So some of you may have met her via that. So where we want to start today is first talking a little bit about one of the major reasons that folks are bringing coaching into their organizations. And we want to share this research around the complexity that each of us is facing as we progress through our careers. So you can see in this chart that we have the green bars are kind of showing what's expected of us at these different stages of our careers. So at the entry level, not a lot expected of us. We're not expected to be able to manage a whole bunch of complexity or change. But as we move through organizations and move up the chain, all of a sudden what we're expected to be able to handle really increases. So you can see by the time that we're in that C-suite, those C-suite roles, we're being asked to handle a lot of complexity, a lot of change, all of which is overlapping. You all know that maybe a couple of decades ago, we could do one change at a time. And now we're just in constant change overlapping on top of each other. And we're asking our leaders to shepherd us through all of that. But the capability that our leaders currently have does not match what they're being asked to do. So as we start an entry level, we're not that far off. But as we grow in the chain, we're being asked to manage more and more complexity. And oftentimes our leaders don't have the capability to do that. So we think coaching is one of the best ways to address this leadership development imperative. This is why leadership development is so important, and doing it in a bespoke, customized way in the way that we can with coaching is one of the best ways to address this discrepancy between what they're capable of and where they need to be to handle the leadership situations that they're being asked to handle. So coaching is a great modality to address this challenge. And there are some challenges with bringing coaching to your organization. So coaching is typically about improving individual performance. That's how a lot of us start to think about coaching. But when we bring coaching engagements into our organizations, we're often not considering what the organization overall is going to get out of it. We're more kind of zeroing in on this one person that's in front of us. There's nothing bad about that. But it is missing this opportunity that we have to look at coaching from a more organizational perspective. So to ask questions not only about what will it bring to this individual, but also how can the organization improve based on this individual coaching engagement or multiple coaching engagements that we have running concurrently within the organization. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. What we see is oftentimes as we begin to work with organizations, there's multiple disconnected coaching engagements happening in those organizations. So there's multiple coaches from multiple vendors. Those coaches are all not working as a team in any way. There's often not alignment to an overall strategic plan in the organization or a people strategy overall, kind of where are we trying to move everybody in the organization. And engagements might be happening in kind of a scattershot way. This person happens to have heard about coaching, so they're participating, or in pockets of the organization. So everybody in the marketing team is really familiar with coaching, but nobody on the finance team is, for example. So that's kind of the way that we can see disconnection across coaching engagements. That makes the overall effectiveness of measuring a coaching program really difficult to do within an organization. And it makes it really difficult to demonstrate the return on investment that we know you can get out of coaching. It's hard to gather all the information across the number of different engagements that are going on. And it's hard to track them if they're all kind of following their own type of process in the coaching engagement. So coaching can be so valuable, and how you deploy it can really enhance that value much beyond the individual or individuals who are participating in coaching. So we think the opportunity here is what we're calling coherent coaching. So we have a couple of things that we think really help to drive the most value out of coaching engagements. So we think that they're most valuable when the coaching program overall is able to translate strategic plans into individual goals for leaders, creating a much more coherent picture about what's happening with coaching and the purpose of coaching within the organization, aligning it both to what the individual needs and what the organization needs or wants from folks. Engaging and aligning all the stakeholders around the coaching engagement. So oftentimes we take the individual from the coaching engagement, we take their coach, we put them together, and we say, go forth and conquer. When there's a real opportunity to, in those coaching engagements, bring in the direct supervisor of the person, who we often call the sponsor of the engagement, potentially somebody from HR, potentially other peers or leaders in the organization that might have helpful input to get everyone aligned around what do we need to do in this particular coaching engagement, or what do we need to be doing with our coaching program overall. And so if we just do individual engagements one-off, oftentimes we're missing that piece. And then third, we also have a way to standardize coaching engagements, including measurement and evaluation, so that coaching engagements become a lot more predictable. Everybody knows what they're going to get. Everyone understands the policies and the confidentiality, and everything about the coaching engagements is going to work the same across all the engagements. So as we're trying to aim at that coherent coaching program, we have a couple of ways that we can solve this. So we've got 4 components that I'm including here. It looks like a roadmap, and definitely some organizations can follow this as a roadmap. Do number 1 first, do number 2 second, do number 3, and then number 4. Depending on where the organization is with the coaching program, you can also think of this as an a la carte menu. Oh, number 3 actually makes most sense for us now. We can tackle that first. So please feel free to look at this either way. Don't feel like you have to have number 1 in order to go to number 2. So the couple of concrete strategies that we have, and we're going to talk about each one of these, is making sure to align the coaching with the strategic plan or other relevant documents, people strategy, mission, vision, values, etc. Like, make sure that coaching is cohesive into the overall picture of your organization. Number 2 is standardizing the engagements so they create consistency. 3 is leveraging your investment in order to reduce the administrative burden on the organization, basically transferring that that administrative burden over to your coaching provider. And then number 4, very specifically demonstrating the return on investment in a deliberate way. So I'm going to take a pause here for any comments, questions, etc. I can't see the chat because of that little trickiness with the PowerPoint. So Lisa, holler at me if there's something in chat. Other people, feel free to come off mute. In the meantime, Lisa's going to put up a poll around which one of these solutions do you think would be most valuable to your organization right now. So Lisa, if you can pop up the poll. Anybody else, feel free to come off mute.
Poll is up.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. All right. Thanks everybody for participating. We've got a lot of good answers coming in here. Okay, we do have a clear winner, quote unquote, which is 36% of you are talking about aligning coaching with the strategic plan. That's wonderful. And then the others are kind of neck and neck. We've got 3 of you interested in standardizing coaching engagements as the top choice, 3 in leveraging the investment and minimizing administrative burden, and then 4 on demonstrating return on investment. So thanks for sharing that with us. It helps us kind of zero in on what we can talk about today. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the first, some of the benefits around aligning coaching with the strategic plan. And when we considered how we were going to bring this information to you, we realized that probably the easiest way to understand it is through some case studies, just of clients that we've worked with who were really using coaching and leadership development really in line with with the direction their organization was going. So, organizations that we've worked with have employed this in a wide range of challenges, as you can see in our four examples. And I think a key point here that you're going to hear is they've really invested in coaching based on the organization's highest priorities, their strategic priorities at the time. So let's talk about that first one around the CEO transition. So one of our clients, the CEO was retiring. There was a new CEO coming in, and the leadership team was basically being reconstituted. So they had some reorganization. They had this move in the CEO. They were adopting EOS, the Enterprise Operating System model. And they were having this new leadership team that was kind of having challenges gelling as a group. So there was all this uncertainty within the organization, but they were very clear that they needed to move forward pretty quickly. And this leadership team needed to step up, take charge, and lead the organization. So in this transition time, the most important thing became sort of stabilizing this leadership team in order to lead the organization. So what we ended up doing with them was focusing their coaching investment on the CEO and their leadership team. So what we did for them was provide 360 assessments across all that leadership team, one-on-one coaching for them, and also monthly team coaching to support them as a group and growing as a group and figuring out where they were going to take the organization. So that multi-pronged approach helped them quickly move into successfully operating as a leadership team and launch this new era in the business, right? Old CEO goes, new CEO comes, let's turn over a new leaf and move in the right direction. So they were able to do that. Our next example is around a client that we supported with succession planning. So this one's pretty interesting. The client was actually a startup and they were getting ready to go public. And what they realized right before they were about to go public is, oh, shoot, when we go public, we're actually going to have a number of people who leave. So some of our key people are going to make the choice to cash out once we go public and move on to something else. And we're going to have gaps all over this organization. And that is going to make it really hard for us to be successful after this big shift. So what they decided to do was actually not focus their coaching on the highest levels of folks at the organization, but they chose to focus on the mid-level and high potential folks in the organization, knowing that those were going to be the ones that they were going to tap to fill in the empty roles. So I think that's pretty interesting because oftentimes we think of the default as like coaching is for our highest level leadership. But in the case of this organization, that wasn't going to be the best use of their investment. The best use of their investment was going to be in the people who were most likely to stay and be able to take on those next roles. So I thought that was quite an interesting case study from that point of view. The third one was around a business transformation. So one of our clients was shifting their business model. They're an organization that has franchisees. And what they were looking to do is increase the collaboration and interdependence between the corporate functions and the franchise organizations. So the franchise organizations for a long time had kind of been left to operate on their own. And now they were trying to bring a little bit more cohesion and consistency across the franchisees. So you can imagine that this may not be well received unless you execute it really well, right? So for this client, we actually said one-on-one coaching isn't the right thing right now. What you all may want to consider is a program in which you're able to bring these multiple corporate functions and franchisees together to work together in a program and create those relationships you're looking to create across people, while at the same time leveling up the skill set that they're going to need to execute this new way of operating. So in that case, they selected people in specific functions because they were going to be so involved in this shift in business model, and select people at different levels. So it wasn't all one level because they knew multiple levels were going to be involved in making this really successful. And they rolled out what they called a leadership development program for these folks to basically go into this new way of operating and have the skill sets, the way of thinking, the understanding that they needed in order to execute on the new model. They decided to use an assessment as part of that program to kind of lay the foundation, do the program, and then have some group coaching over after the leadership development program was done. Okay, last case study. This one is a client who was actually just a delight to work with. This client, an individual, was recommended to start coaching because the organization was really shifting the way in which they led. So they were moving away from a hierarchical kind of command and control type model to a much more participative, collaborative way of managing. And this particular leader who was coming to coaching was staying back in command and control because that was working for him. He was getting a lot of business results, et cetera. But what they ended up realizing is as other managers were moving into a much more collaborative style, he was getting left behind in terms of relationships with peers and folks who were working for him, who didn't like the command and control way that he was operating. And he was getting mixed signals, quite frankly, from his supervisor, like, do you want the business results that I've always gotten with command and control? Or do you want me to be a collaborative leader? And in the coaching engagement, the most important thing was for him to be able to understand and come up with the way for himself to be able to be a collaborative leader and continue to get the business results that they relied on from him. So the coaching in this case was one-on-one coaching, but it also included a couple of other components that were crucially important, including the coach having the opportunity to shadow this person and see what command and control looked like in order to be able to provide that perspective on how that could shift to something that looked a little bit more collaborative, drawing on the team a little bit more. So what I hope that I've represented in these case studies is that the way that you align coaching to a strategic plan is not a formula. It's not a clear recipe. It's not every time the strategy says this, we do that. It's more about really understanding the shift that the organization is trying to make, the goals that they're trying to reach, the shifts in culture that they're trying to make sure are pervasive across the organization, and then designing the right approach in response to that. So you can see in our examples that sometimes that's with the leadership team, sometimes that's at a completely different level. Those are a couple of groups that we focused on. Sometimes it's not that much coaching at all, but a different approach. And sometimes it's really on that individual targeted level. So let me just pause there. Questions, comments, anything coming up in the chat, Lisa?
No questions in the chat.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's go on to our second benefit. So standardizing the coaching engagements creates all kinds of wonderful opportunities for the organization. And standardizing can happen in a couple of different ways that we actually think are key to most coaching engagements. So as we think about standardization, a couple of key elements here are we're looking to create, number one, a consistent experience of coaching within the organization. So when somebody says, I'd like to participate in coaching, or somebody says, I'd like to offer you coaching, it's clear to the person what they're going to get. It's not sort of a mystery of what's going to be included in coaching and how long it will be and what's my coach going to be like and all those kinds of things. But it's like, I know coaching means this at my organization. It also, another important element is to bring that common language into the organization. So those are a couple of things that we're able to do with standardization. So first of all, let's talk about the idea of standardization starts with a dedicated team of coaches. So let's say you want to offer leadership coaching across your organization, having that dedicated team of coaches who knows your organization and has been educated on your strategy, goals, culture, et cetera, can really level up the coaching that's offered across the board. So with that kind of team, they're able to sort of have this foundation even before they go into their first coaching session with any of the clients at your organization. That dedicated team also, we're looking for having a kind of meeting a particular threshold as we think about the education that they've received, the experience that they have, in order to create a very consistent experience. Not one person's getting a coach who's been trained over here in this model and does it this way, and another one's getting a coach who's been trained in a totally different model. So again, that consistency is what we're driving with this dedicated team of coaches. The next thing is to really make sure that you're standardizing your kickoff and goal setting conversations at the front end so that everyone who's coming into coaching understands that they're going to have a conversation where they understand what's being asked of me in coaching, what's my role, what are the assessments that are included here, how can I understand what my relationship with my coach looks like, including around confidentiality, and what are the goals that I'm setting for coaches and for my coaching engagement, and how are those going to be communicated to my supervisor, HR, or others across the organization. So we're kind of level setting everything at the beginning. Assessments are another really key way that we can standardize these coaching engagements. So what you may see in your organization, or I've certainly seen in other organizations I've been a part of, is a variety of different assessments that are used. So these people over here, they like to use DISC, communication style, and these people over here, they like to use Strengths Finder, and these folks love to use a 360, and these other folks love to use Myers-Briggs. And so what we have is coaches who are using inconsistent assessments or pieces of the organization that are focusing on different assessments. And so what we're missing when we do that is the ability to have that common language that I spoke about. So everyone understands this is how we talk about communication at our organization. Or we're really focused on leveraging people's strengths. Or the competencies that are included in this 360 are the ones that we know are expected of our leadership at our organization. So creating that consistency across assessments, again, creates so much predictability when you're able to offer some of these standards. And I'll just add one other thing. Sometimes that also means minimizing the number of assessments that you're using. So instead of kind of scattershot, pick anything you want, it's like, this is what we use for the 360. This is what we use for something like personality. This is what we use to assess stage of adult development, that vertical development component I was talking about, or other specialty assessments. In standardizing these engagements, the other thing you're going to want to be looking for is some kind of a coach matching process. So again, what we see oftentimes is somebody knows a coach or their friend or colleague worked with a coach and they say, I'd like to work with that person. And that's often how a coach comes into an organization or gets connected with somebody. What can be really helpful in coaching is to be able to select your coach from several options. So as you saw in our slide with the pictures, we have 40 folks that we work with. Nobody wants to look through 40 coach bios nor talk to 40 coaches. And so the way that we do this at the Sparks Group, and other organizations do this differently, is in that kickoff and goal setting conversation, we're getting a sense of what that client desires in their coach. So they're expressing their preferences. I'd like a coach who has this particular experience or a background in this, or educated in this particular way of thinking, or particular identity characteristics are important to me. I'd like a coach that embodies those. And then we're offering 3 coaches from our team that the person can talk to for 30 minutes each and kind of get a sense of, is this the right person for me right now? Do I trust this person? Do I want to spend my coaching time with this person? Are they the one that's best positioned to help me with what I'm looking to achieve in coaching? And then they're able to select their coach. The reason this is so important is because it allows us to really accelerate the coaching engagement right from the front end. So instead of spending a lot of time in coaching sessions figuring out, how does this person operate? Can I trust my coach, et cetera? A lot of that is done during the coach matching stage. And we're eliminating any potential disconnects between coaches and clients by making sure that we're proposing folks to them who meet their criteria, what they're looking for. So that's how coach matching works. Other thing that I've seen be a little bit challenging is inconsistent policies around confidentiality across coaching engagements. So one coach says, I'm going to give a report out to HR every month about what's going on in coaching. Another coach says, I'm not sharing anything from the coaching engagement with the organization. Well, that creates a lot of inconsistency in what people expect and whether they're willing to sign up for coaching or not. If they don't know, it's going to be confidential. We all have been in organizations before where a company offers so many benefits, mental health benefits, et cetera, all these things that people could take advantage of, but they don't because they're worried about what that's going to mean about them or what the organization is going to hear about their participation or something like that. So typical confidentiality policy across a coaching program, what you can be looking for is confidentiality between the coach and their client. So any one-on-one sessions, completely confidential between the two of those folks, and any assessment results are also confidential to the coach and the person who's participated in the assessment. That shouldn't be shared with the organization because that will make it challenging for the person to fully trust their coach and bring up everything they need to bring up in coaching. Now, many people ask me, but like, what if the organization needs an eye on what's happening in the coaching engagement? Why would I be paying for this and have no idea what's happening there? That is where we bring in our case, sponsor alignment sessions. So let me talk about those on the next page. What we're doing in those sessions is very explicitly giving an eye to the organization into what's happening in the coaching engagement in a way that allows us to maintain confidentiality between the coach and the client. So in a sponsor alignment session, we have the sponsor of the engagement. So that's typically the representative of the organization, typically the direct supervisor. Every once in a while, we see this being somebody from HR. Every once in a while, we see this being like somebody like a mentor in the organization, but it's very typically the direct supervisor. They're coming together in a conversation between the sponsor, the coach, and the client in order to make sure that the sponsor can see exactly what's happening in the coaching engagement and the client is reporting out on what's happening. For example, these are the goals that I've set in my coaching engagement. This is what I'm going to be working on. What do you think? Do you have any input? Is there anything I'm missing? These are the things I'd like your support on in the coaching engagement. Could you help me with this or that, or support me in this other thing? And we really see this as a way to do two things. Number one, make sure the organization has a clear eye in what is the person focusing on and how do they want the support of the organization in order to achieve those goals. But it also gives the coach a view on what does this relationship look like between the sponsor and the person participating in coaching? How can I support the two of them in navigating this relationship to really benefit the growth of the person participating in coaching as much as possible? And you would be surprised at the number of times that this kind of conversation is one of the first that folks have ever had in terms of advocating for support for something, helping the supervisor play that role of development advocate. It might be new for them also to support people in a coaching engagement. So allowing those conversations to happen so the coach can guide everybody through it are really helpful. Typically, this is happening 2 or 3 times in a coaching engagement, depending on how long it is. We're often seeing it at beginning, middle, and end. Kind of what are my goals? What support do I need? Middle, how's it going? What input do you have? Are you seeing the changes I'm seeing? And at the end, this is what I think I've accomplished in the coaching engagement. And here's where I'm going next. Let me pause there. Questions, comments, thoughts around any of that? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. What happens when you have a sense, as you speak to the sponsor, that actually the client is being put into coaching for corrective or even disciplinary reasons, and you have a feeling that you're participating in checking a freaking HR box on their way out?
Yes, such a good question. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So our experience is that I would say 80% of our coaching is in the bucket of enhancing somebody's capabilities for some new challenge that they're taking on. But like Chris is talking about, we have about 20% of engagements that are coming to us like, we can't figure out how to help this person. Why don't we get them a coach and you'll sort it out for them? And Chris, I think the most important thing about that is to identify that on the front end and be really clear that that's the situation that you're in.
Yes.
You want to say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I found sometimes that there's lip service to that up front, that this is
Yeah,
developmental, you're hot,
totally.
and then it starts emerging. Sometimes from the client saying, I think I'm on borrowed time.
Mm,
And you start
yeah.
getting the vibe. So I found it's very helpful to do a mid-course sponsor alignment.
Hmm.
And sometimes I'll just have a straight up one-on-one with the sponsor, like, are we really sure what's going on before this third party's ever in the room? And then the client gets to drive the sort of extended chemistry goal setting, and then we launch. But what surprised me is sometimes how it emerges. And I think with the complexity and the chaos and the pain people are in, this is showing up a little more subtly as we go than when I've been on other coaching benches, and it's pretty clear in the start, it was, and
Okay.
things went fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good point. So there is the piece where you can kind of figure it out on the front end. Even as before you get into the coaching engagement, I'm kind of asking folks like, is this person on a performance improvement plan? Is this the last straw? Is this your final ditch effort? So I'm trying to get a lot of that information and make sure that everybody in the coaching engagement understands that that's where we are when we start, including the coach, the sponsor, and the person participating in coaching. But Chris, I love how you're talking about that emerging over time, and that does happen. And exactly like you said, that midpoint sponsor alignment is a great time to put that on the table. In fact, Jessica has this great example about how one of the sponsors she was working with told her, this person's on thin ice. If they can't sort it out in coaching, I'm firing them, but didn't tell the client that. So when she was in the sponsor alignment, she put that on the table. She said, so it seems like you're not talking about this thing that I think everybody knows, but maybe I'm wrong. Is this the last ditch effort? And the sponsor said, oh, no, no, no. I'm so happy with this person's work. So the point of what I'm saying here is it's also not the role of the coach to deliver organization information that the organization needs to deliver. So that's another thing about our confidentiality policy. The coach is not meant to deliver that. That is not their role. The coach is in partnership with the client. And so I will say there's a couple of things that we do in these situations because we do see it. It happens, obviously. Number one is if we see that pretty significant disconnect, we will offer coaching to the sponsor. So not only is their person participating in coaching, but maybe they're having 2 or 3 coaching sessions with a different coach, right? So we don't break any confidentiality in any way, who's helping them understand, how can I phrase this? How can I bring this to this person? How can I bring this into these sponsor alignment conversations? Because that supervisor needs to say it out loud, and that's their role. So that's one thing that we do. Second thing that we do is what I talked about in one of our case studies, where we have the person shadowed. So if the coach can watch the person kind of doing something that seems really extreme, then the coach can just call them out on it. Wow, it seems like you got really upset in that meeting, or you're not approaching your team very collaboratively, or whatever it is. So that's another way that the coach can notice what's happening and talk about it with the client. And then I would say the third thing that we do every once in a while is we set up specific meetings between the coach and the sponsor that are one-on-one, like Chris is talking about, in order to get this information and tell the sponsor that this is going to be shared with the client. So we're trying to pull it out and then kind of writing a report. This is what I heard. No judgment. This is just what I heard. And when we do that, we're really upfront with the client that that conversation is going to happen, because we typically don't want the coach and the sponsor talking one-on-one to each other. We don't want the sponsor telling the coach things that the client doesn't know. But if that's the only way to kind of pull it out and put it on the table, we'll say, how about this? The coach talks to the sponsor for an hour. The coach talks to HR for an hour. The coach summarizes, this is what I'm hearing from the sponsor and HR, gives that to the sponsor and HR and the client, and says, here's what I learned. Maybe this is the start of our coaching engagement.
Yeah.
I would say 95% of the time that works. And then we still have that 5%, like the example I shared about Jessica, where the person just, no matter what you do, they can't share how they really think.
Yeah. Sometimes surfaces that the best issue that they really need to address is we don't trust each other here.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
this might be the presenting issue. This is going to, but you guys don't talk to each other. So I think you got bigger fish to fry.
exactly. Exactly. And when the coach is in those three-way conversations, they can say that, right? It appears to me like you all aren't speaking very frankly with each other. Is that a problem here? And then kind of leave it on the table for them. Okay. Thank you, Chris. Great combo. So just when you think about how might I standardize these engagements, there's multiple ways to do it, right? You can offer kind of the same coaching engagement across the board. With one of our clients, I wanted to show you an example of how we offer coaching based on the level of the person at the organization. So you can see a couple things are similar across these engagements. A couple things are different across the engagements. So as you think about offering coaching at different levels, you might think about how long are the engagements? Is there a little bit shorter support to emerging leaders, mid and senior? Or based on your strategic plans or your people development strategy, might that need to be a little different? Actually, the mid-level folks are who we're really trying to focus in on. Let's provide them the most support. Um, Coaching is mostly happening every other week. That's pretty standard across engagements. You can determine the number of sponsor alignment sessions based on the length of the engagement, based on the particular goals or challenges the person is working on. And in all of our engagements, we say, here's the number of sponsor alignment sessions you have to do. But if the coach, the client, or the sponsor think, wait, we better realign on this, we need a conversation, they can ask for that. So they can notice that something's off and saying the three of us need to come together again. You might vary the assessments that you offer based on the level. So I talked a little bit about assessments at the front end, but we're typically at the Sparks group thinking of kind of something around a personality assessment, something around a 360, which can either be automated or interviews with people across the organization, and then typically something around maturity. Every once in a while for a client, we will use a specialty assessment, like something around emotional intelligence, strengths. We have a resilience assessment that's pretty cool. So depending on the needs of the person, we can use one of those. Then other thing that you're going to see pretty standard across engagements is that coaches should be available to their clients in between sessions, not to get on the phone and talk for 3 hours, but a call, an email, a text. If something comes up, we want our clients to feel like they have access to their coaches to tap into them. If something happens between coaching sessions, that would be really helpful to be able to share with their coach. All right, I'm going to go on to the third benefit here. Any questions or comments anyone wants to bring up before I go there? All righty. So for some of you, this might feel more important than for others, but we certainly have a number of clients that we work with who have relatively complex financial procedures or procurement procedures, et cetera. And so one of the things that we're really able to do when you choose one coaching vendor is make sure that you are able to reduce the burden on those other departments that you're looking to partner with as you bring vendors into your organization. So they approve one vendor. The one vendor figures out how to send the invoices correctly. There's not a lot of confusion there. The connection to the bank is very clear. The contracts are always very clear because they're consistent across all engagements, or there's a master services agreement in place, et cetera. So that's really the administrative side of it that can be really burdensome. The other thing that can be burdensome, and we actually are seeing this currently in one of our clients who's scaling down the number of vendors they're using, is they have a smattering of coaching vendors, and they're scaling it back to 2 because it's too complex for them within their program to say, this is the vendor I'm going to for this client, or this is the vendor I'm going to for this client, or this is the vendor I'm going to for this client. So instead, they're scaling it down to 2 vendors. And for any client going, okay, you are going to get coaching from the Sparks group, they are going to provide you with a list of qualified coaches. I'm not involved in that. I'm not involved in the matching. I'm kind of outsourcing that to the coaching firm. So that can be really great. When you're looking at that qualified team of coaches, you want to be looking for a couple of things in your provider. Number 1, that they have a diverse bench. Number 2, that all of them have been formally trained in a coaching program, that they're certified by the International Coaching Federation, and that they're following the International Coaching Federation's core competencies around coaching and code of ethics. Within that code of ethics is also the confidentiality policy that we follow, which is basically it's confidential between the coach and the person participating in coaching, unless you're very explicit and above board about when you're going to be talking to other people in the organization and the client has signed off on that. Another thing that we see with the administrative burden is being able to just reach out to your single point of contact at your coaching vendor. Hey, I need this to change about our agreement. Hey, I need to add these different kinds of people as coaches to our bench because all of a sudden we have all these new group of people who's going to be able to participate in coaching. Other thing that you can do with a single point of contact is ask them to distribute information across your coaches. So you send that single point of contact. You basically your project manager at the coaching vendor. This is my strategic plan. These are the updates to our leadership competencies. This is the leadership program that some of our folks are going through. Here's the curriculum and the concepts that they're going to be learning. And that person is then educating the coaches on the other side. When you work with ABC organization, you need to know that these are their 15 leadership competencies. That's what they're being measured against. This is how their performance management process works. These are the top priorities for them in the next 5 years. All of that provides a lot of information to the coaches to really make sure they're focusing on the right things with their clients. Then lastly, honestly, you can save money by going with one single provider or maybe a couple. If you know you're going to have 10 coaching engagements over the next 2 years, you might be able to negotiate a lot different rates for your coaching rather than going one off to different vendors or even the same vendor repeatedly. So kind of getting clear on these are the folks that we're going to work with over the next 2 to 3 years, and we're going to bring a minimum of this many clients can really help with the negotiations on your side and create a lot more predictability in terms of your coaching investment. Questions, thoughts, anything to add here? All right. The last benefit that I wanted to share around this idea of being kind of more cohesive in your approach to coaching engagements across the organization is the ability to demonstrate ROI much more clearly than feeling like you need to gather data from the number of different engagements that's happening across the organization. So part of this is linked to the administrative burden, right? You can tell the coaching vendor, you're supposed to be tracking these things. You're supposed to be reporting to me on these things. I don't need to solicit them from across all of the engagements. We can do that in terms of a couple of things. Number one, we can measure growth in very explicit ways. So for example, we can use an assessment at the beginning of an engagement and the end of engagement and compare and contrast. How has this person grown over time? We're also using a lot of anecdotal evidence, honestly, from our clients around what's happening in coaching engagements. Clients reach out to us and say, oh my gosh, I did this. I love that. I can't believe my coach was able to whatever it is. We're hearing from the sponsors like that. We're hearing from HR sometimes like that. And when you have one provider, they can put all that information together in a package and say, here's what's happening with coaching in your organization. Here's what we're hearing across the board. When we think about the assessments we might use to measure growth, we definitely can use the assessment around stage of adult development. So kind of how has my ability to think differently changed over the coaching engagement? You can also use a 360, although you can imagine that will be a little trickier, right? Because the people who you might be working with at the beginning of your coaching engagement could shift over time. And then at the end, you're not necessarily getting input from those exact same folks. But still, the 360 does a pretty good job of comparing and contrasting what happened at the beginning of the engagement and what happened at the end. With one of our clients right now, we're also talking about the possibility of using some of the internal assessments that they use within the organization in order to leverage those at the beginning and end of the coaching engagement versus bringing in any kind of outside assessment. So a lot of options there. We're also able to really provide a pretty strong return on investment when we think about the feedback loop back to the organization. So this one, without breaking confidentiality in any way, if you have a number of coaching engagements going on across an organization and you have a team working on those engagements, you can solicit from those coaches what's coming up in your coaching engagements without telling us who your client is, without telling us exactly when it came up. what's coming up. So if we see that across all 10 of those engagements this year, everybody's talking about burnout, that's probably something that would be helpful to address in some other way that might be outside of coaching, right? Providing more tools, offering opportunities for breaks, whatever it might happen to look like in your organization. And so by being able to see that full picture, you can then leverage that to say, okay, my investment in my next training needs to be right here. I'm hearing from enough people that this is a challenge that's consistent, that I'm going to do something different about it to support the organization. People ask me all the time, how do you do that in a way that's confidential? Number one is we don't say who the coach is who reported it. We don't say who the client is who reported it. And we don't do it unless we have a certain number of engagements happening at the organization so that we're able to make sure that it's truly anonymous. Other thing is that we tell everybody at the front end that we're going to do this. So we say at your organization, ABC, we currently have 5 engagements going on. That means we are going to be reporting out themes from the engagement. We're going to ask your coach quarterly what's coming up. So if there is something you don't want your coach to bring up as a theme in your engagement, you tell your coach that. And then they can kind of calibrate, okay, this thing with my challenge with my supervisor, please don't bring that up as a theme. But the theme about like work-life balance, yeah, report that one up. That works for me. So we're just able to make sure that the client is comfortable with what's being reported up. Okay, last thing as a benefit is you can really leverage the partnership if you are able really to turn that vendor into a partner of yours. So rather than being a vendor that you're just like kind of pushing things out to, creating a partnership with the vendor so that they're able to understand the constraints that you're under, know the goals and challenges of the organization, of your industry, create partnerships with a number of folks on your team, maybe get to meet the leadership team or other HR team members or whatever it is at some point, is really going to help them understand much better the context that you're working in within your organization, and then be able to partner with you on what else might work here. When are there cases that coaching might not be the right solution and you might want to consider something else, et cetera. So being able to kind of turn a single coaching provider into somebody who becomes more of a partner to you, a thinking partner around coaching and leadership development, obviously has that benefit to you all as well as the organization as a whole and the individuals participating in coaching. Let me pop this up on here for a second. So in summary, and then I'd like to take some questions from you all, we basically have this checklist on what you might want to look for as you're considering who would be the best coaching provider for you. And we're going to send this checklist when we send the recording, so you should have it to look at. But basically, you're looking for somebody who does give you that single point of contact, who holds onboarding or kickoff calls to make sure that everyone involved in the engagement truly understands what's included, what their roles are, how confidentiality works, what is the deal with the assessment, et cetera, making sure everyone's grounded in that. Third is that they do have a diverse bench, because all of us work in organizations where people are all kinds of different in all the ways that people could be different. So making sure that the provider has coaches that are going to be able to meet your folks where they are is really important. They have some process for hiring and communicating the training and accreditation of all their coaches. So you make sure that you're kind of at a minimum threshold and there's a high caliber of coaches working with you. That they have a coach matching process, again, so that your folks can be confident that they're going to work with a coach that they really want to work with, who's the right person for them at the time. That they do include sponsor alignment meetings, so the organization has a view into what's happening in the engagement. They regularly check in with you and the folks who are participating in coaching and the sponsors on how it's going, and if anything needs to shift or change. They're collecting themes across engagement and sharing with those with you so that you can leverage them. They are measuring ROI, at least at the individual level, but sometimes partnering with you to be able to do that at the organizational level as well. They're offering some kind of volume discount, and they're able to streamline payment, administration, procurement, all the kind of stuff that goes on over there that we all hope works magically. But there are people who are really investing their time in making sure that that happens in a good way. So let me just have Lisa pop up the poll. and then let's go to questions. So I'd love for you to mark the two that feel most important to you. If you're choosing your coaching provider, what are the two that you're like, I'm not compromising on these? So let's see if we can get some responses. All right, here we go. Now they're coming up. All righty. Thank you to those of you who are participating. Appreciate it. Okay, we have pretty strong preference here around the training and accreditation of coaches. So I love seeing that. Definitely that International Coaching Federation certification and seeing what training programs your coaches have participated in can be super informative. And then let me just end this and I can share the results here. And then the other one that we got a smattering all over the place. And then the other one that we're seeing that has a couple under it is the coach matching. I also really love the coach matching process. I love being the person who matches the coaches with clients, but I also love the idea of really being able to choose the coach that you want to work with. I've certainly been able to do that myself, and it's wonderful. Sponsor alignment meetings, also agree. This is a huge differentiator, and the check-ins to monitor the project. Okay, love it. Love it. Those are all awesome. So I'm going to put our last slide up for you. Feel free to use that QR code to get our paper around vertical development, those stages of adult development that we go through that help us manage complexity and rapid change in a better way. That might be interesting for everyone. So QR code that. I'll leave this up for a minute, and then I'll take it down so we can just have a final chat together. What questions do you have? Feel free to go off mute, or Lisa, let me know if there's anything in the chat. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. What are you hearing and what are you facing when it comes to AI? And let me frame that AI now can deliver PCC grade outputs that are perfectly good for those lower tiers. 24/7, extremely cheap. So I'm seeing it feels like, well, it's a bot for and it's an MCC coach in person for me in the C-suite. And so what are you seeing the marketplaces telling and pushing you to go to and provide to differentiate? Oh, a machine can do it for our young emerging talent, but boy, the C-suite needs Anna Sparks in the room, please.
Well, I love this question. And honestly, I think everybody in the coaching world is wrestling with this right now. And I'm sure our thinking will evolve and evolve and evolve as AI evolves. But Chris, I've had the same experience as you. I've used an AI coach myself to see what does it feel like? What can they do? And it's pretty awesome. There's a lot of amazing things that those AI coaches can do. And you don't even have to get a coaching like app. You just do it in Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot, and they're actually pretty good at offering you some of those challenging questions. I've also had conversations with a couple of tech startups who are doing something like, let me like embed this AI coach into everybody's computers who will listen to all their meetings, read all their emails. And if they're salespeople, coach them on sales. And if they're this people, coach them on this other thing. So there's all kinds of stuff out there that you can either tap into or might be foisted on you at some point. I think that there's two things here. Number one is just as human beings, our willingness to take advantage of things that are available to us. And so we all have had that experience of, I can't focus on this thing until the person is in front of me. And so there is something magical about being able to focus your coaching time with your coach when a human being is sitting in front of you in a way that I can't do on the computer because other stuff is popping up on my computer or my phone, drawing my attention somewhere else. I have to remember to go and ask Claude this question that I had. Whereas with coaching, I am being asked at that time to focus on that thing. And it's pretty hard to multitask when I have that person that I'm paying to coach me right in front of me. So I think that's real. I think that's very real. The other thing that I think is AI still has not quite figured out how to challenge us in exactly the right ways. So they ask very good questions for the most part, but they don't necessarily always learn about me over time, and they don't ask me the most challenging thing. They ask me the standard coaching questions that are good, very good. But it's not that nuance that sometimes I need, regardless of what level I'm at. So I think
Right.
AI coaches 100% go for it, as long as you can make sure it's private and they're not sharing all your information everywhere. Go for it. And if you're the kind of person who can tap into that coach on a regular basis and doesn't need to make an appointment with somebody, I actually
Yeah.
think you could go pretty far with AI coaching.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's the case for most of us.
Yes. May I offer a bit more?
Please.
The remembering that this is an extremely skillful language generation machine. It can put out brilliant language better than my language more reliably at 3 in the morning. But
For
this
sure.
thing, but this thing of Anna hears the question under the question.
Right.
She
It can
and she
only read the
doesn't
words. Yeah.
and right. And so an AI reflects back us. It becomes a mirror in which that's what the sycophancy and the psychosis is. That it will
Mhm.
just play back more language based on the language we feed it. It's the human coach who, through sheer presence and energy and their human maturity inside skin, inside bodies, that can say, oh, the thing under the thing, I need to challenge. I need to take an
Mm.
intuitional leap and ask something that may be kind of risky, but I can hold it because I've built this relationship with another human. And so I don't
Mhm.
think we can presume just because we're physical that we win, because actually the bot will track all those sessions better than I can. This is why I use a bot on the back end to help me track all the sessions I've
Yeah.
ever been in with that client. So
Yeah.
it augments me. And I think that's that space where it can augment us humans
Mhm.
and we can help people understand it's, even if it sounds incredibly perceptive and empathetic,
Mhm.
these are
Yeah.
language tokens being generated on machinery.
Totally. And it's spoken language, not body language, which is another thing that AI I think eventually will figure that out, but they don't have it right now. So I can say something to AI and my face could be communicating something entirely different. A coach will see that and AI won't. So there's a lot of that too. I know we're at time. I welcome anybody who wants to stay on and kind of continue the conversation to stay on. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to have folks follow up with us by email. You'll get the recording, you'll get that checklist. I really appreciate all of you all being here today. It was really delightful. Thanks for the good questions and the participation. And I look forward to connecting with all of you one on one, hopefully at some point.
Thank you, Anna.
Bye, Michiko. Good to see you.
Bye. Thank you, Chris. Bye.
Thank you, Michiko.
Bye.
Thank you, Hannah. Bye bye.
See you later.
Thanks, Anna. I'll talk to you whenever we get a chance to talk.
That sounds good. Good to see you, Chris.
All right. Do you want to stop the recording?
Yes.